So I will introduce Juliet Berling, who is the Director of Planning, Housing, and Community Development with the City of Binghamton. And Rust to Green has also, or the City of Binghamton has also been a Rust to Green partner. And while Juliet won't focus so much on that partnership today, she'll focus on a key piece of what that work has been doing, which has really been thinking about asset-based development and drawing on local resources to do that. Juliet?
Thank you. Hi, so I'm Juliet. I am from the city of Binghamton. I grew up in Binghamton, went to the high school there, went to the university, and there you go. All right, thank you. And I'm here with two members of my team, Youngabi and Uriah. You still can't hear me? All right, how's that? I'll stand closer. All right, so thank you for letting me talk about our town, our city, and the problems that we've gone through. This might not be exactly what everyone else is talking about, but it definitely goes along with the climate change impact and how we've used our resources. So the city of Binghamton is located at the confluence of two rivers. We do have a lot of flooding issues, major flooding, as well as not so major flooding, but just an ongoing issue. My background is in planning and is in environmental protection as well. I've started a couple of programs in the past, and moving into this position of the city of Binghamton gave me an opportunity to really bring my knowledge and experience to somewhere it would do a lot of good. And I followed Tarek. He was my predecessor, so I had a very good foundation to begin with, and talking about collaboration later. But let me move on. There we go. So I was asked to pick an issue, a topic to discuss, and we have quite a few of them, but they all kind of resolve around the issue we have, which is flooding. Flooding, renovation development, housing conversions, and floodplain development, and they all tie into one thing, which was our main approach, keeping green space green. Now, before I go on further with this, I want to just mention Binghamton has more than 50% rental property. We have more tenants than we have property owners. We have more than 50% low, moderate income population. So we have a lot of other issues, that are impacting development and housing. So when you keep green space green, you're restricting development. You're trying to prevent it from obscuring what we want a green space to do, which is to absorb floodwaters, which is to provide avenues for floodwaters to disperse to reduce velocity. So I won't go into too much detail, but with green space, it provides space for socializing, reduces air and noise pollution, provides space for floodwater retention. We expanded our available green space in our urban area by incentivizing renovation, restoration, by restricting development through permitting process, and by repurposing the green space that we have. One of the discussions earlier was green space, and not much was occurring with it other than lawn. The expected outcome from these programs was, of course, hopefully reducing flooding, reducing flood impact, increasing our reuse of existing structures, which had been vacant for over 10 years, a number of them, limiting floodplain development, but still allowing it where appropriate. And that development had to include river access on private property, which is hard to get agreement to. Let's see. So in terms of keeping our green space green, we came up with methods to protect and expand our green space. When we used the New York Rising and the FEMA buyout programs, we targeted properties that made a cohesive sense. We expanded urban farms. We built from a Design Your Park program. We created pocket parks. We created a Adopt a Park, a side lot program where homes have been taken down. I'm going to get more into that later. We also, in terms of renovating our downtown buildings, these are the buildings that had been vacant forever. They'd been former office buildings, warehouses and funeral homes. They've been converted into housing units now, which is good and also has created part of our issues. But by waiving some of the parking restrictions, if property was renovated, they didn't have to provide on-site parking. it reduced the pressure to develop on our available green space. We developed a floodplain development permit which had such restrictions in it, it was so expensive, that it really did limit a lot of applications. Only one was successful. And it ended up with reducing the footprint of a previous building, increasing green space in that building, and providing public access to the river as well, which we're trying to incorporate a positive image, I think, of our rivers. As they flood, people kind of lose that positive image. Let me move on. I just lectured last night on environmental systems. So what we're working on is using our environmental services to provide floodwater prevention and reduction. And we want to use our green spaces to enhance our city. So we've worked with one of our neighborhood programs is Vines, Volunteers Improving Neighborhood Environments. And we added over 2 acres to their downtown Binghamton Urban Farm expansion, which is right along the Susquehanna River. The Design Your Own Park program, we had vacant property from demolitions, and we had 2 parks take advantage of that, 2 neighborhoods, Sunflower Park and Walnut Street. The renovation and development programs, we had the downtown center was pretty much revitalized by renovation of our downtown buildings, providing the housing. And the housing that was provided was a new type of housing. It was a higher density. It was a very expensive renovation process, so they are very expensive as well. So this is leading to my lessons learned project. But by allowing this development, it did reduce the pressure on existing green space resources. SUNY Broome has developed a culinary arts institute. Well, they're in the process of building it. They're renovating one of our oldest buildings, the Carnegie Library, and turning it into an institute rather than breaking ground again. The 50 Front Street development is the one development that went through our floodplain development permitting process. There was a building, I can't remember if it was built in the 40s, but a building on that site was abandoned, had been reused, and was abandoned again. It was in bad condition. The city and we raised funds through other sources as well, and the building was demolished. And this new one, I think if you can see the image there of people sitting around a little fire, has a smaller footprint, has increased retail, has residential above, and has provided public access to the river. And everything was done following a flood reduction plan, which they adhered we made sure they adhered to it. All right. So I want to jump to the lessons learned because I know that I'm probably talking far too much. So one of the unintended consequences of this development trying to reduce pressure on our green space was actually revitalizing and renovating our downtown buildings and creating a new type of housing, which was a high density, 5+ bedroom apartments, 5 to 10 bedroom apartments, 14 bedroom apartments. And this was really geared towards people looking for group living, students. I don't want to say student housing, but it was. So we created higher density living by keeping our green space open. It took property off the tax rolls. We had about 25 different lots that are in permanent green space now, being put into use as parks and for farming. But it ended up impacting our affordable housing as we've lost housing through demolitions and conversions to maintain green space through renovation of our downtown area into high-end, high-density housing. We lost affordable housing, and what that did was it ended up increasing illegal conversions to boarding houses, to rooming houses. These were homes that weren't built to support that level of use, that density of use, and so there's impacts to, for example, electrical overload, and we have an increased incidence of code violations. So we corrected one problem, and the goal was to increase housing units, and the goal was to increase and protect our green space, reduce our flooding, and we ended up creating an additional issue and problems. Now, I should say we do have a lot of vacant properties in Binghamton. We have a number of zombie properties, mortgage foreclosed, tax foreclosed, that we are trying to work with as well. Thank you for the LISC grants. We're doing our best with that. But a lot of the issues that we're identifying right now are stemming from our floods and the methods that we've chosen to reduce that flooding. So, on the final slide, we won't get into that, but shared capital, working together, bringing together all resources, social, intellectual, and political, as well as economic resources. Binghamton is not a very affluent area, so we pull in as much funding as we can and we leverage it with what we can invest. So, we good? All right.